Okay, good morning, year five. So, following on from the learning journey session, our guided reading session today, we're going to hear some more of the book and we're going to start to develop our understanding of the main character. So, um, what we need to think about as we're reading this is what have we heard so far? Okay, what do we know about Liam Digby? Okay, our main character, and what do we learn throughout this chapter? Okay, so you're going to be thinking about his feelings, okay, how he's feeling at this time, and what we know about him. Okay, so I want you to think about those things. Keep those in mind as we're reading. Okay, chapter 3, my favourite gravity. I don't think the world has vanished, but it is worrying not to be able to see it. After all, Earth is where I keep all my stuff. Thinking about all my favourite bits, my mum, my dad, my bedroom, my computer, makes me feel a bit calmer. There's a massive Playmobil Viking ship that takes up half the floor, or used to take up half the floor. I put it back in its box the day I discovered I'd grown facial hair. I just thought that anyone with a beard, even a wispy one, is probably too old for a Playmobil. I say I discovered the facial hair. To be honest, I never noticed it because we've got energy saving light bulbs in the bathroom. It was other people who pointed it out to me during the Year 6 Leavers outing to Enchantment Land. The most famous ride in Enchantment Land is the Cosmic. All the way there on the coach, everyone kept going on about how big and scary it was. Everyone had a brother or a cousin who'd been on it and never been the same again. In case you didn't know, the Cosmic is a kind of metal cage with two seats in it. It's attached to the top of a massive crane by a big kind of elastic band. They pull the cage down to the ground with a chain and fasten it with an electromagnet. You sit inside and they switch off the magnet. The elastic catapults you into the air and it snaps back towards the ground again. Then you bounce up and down for a while. It's only frightening for about 10 seconds, but for those 10 seconds it's so frightening that Ben's cousin's hair supposedly turned completely white. And it goes so fast that Joe's next door neighbour's stomach came loose and ended up stuck in his own neck, and he had to have an operation. Apparently, he'll show you the stitches if you ask him. Despite these obvious drawbacks, everyone said that they were going to go on it, until we got there and discovered there was a height requirement. Namely, a wooden Martian holding his arm out straight and a speech bubble that said, "If you can walk under my arm, you can't take the Cosmic." Everyone could easily walk under the arm, except me. It only came up to my shoulder. "Okay," said the man, "you're on." See what I mean about height versus age? It's a height requirement, not an age requirement. Everyone was moaning, saying it wasn't fair and how rubbish it was being a kid and how they wished they were grown-ups. That's what they said. In fact, they were all blatantly relieved that they weren't tall enough. The man said, "You'll need someone to go on with you. It's two at a time, or no." I looked at Miss Hayes, our teacher. She shrugged. "Are you allowed on if you're pregnant?" "No," said the man, but you could hardly hear him because everyone was so excited by the news that Miss Hayes was having a baby. "No one else?" said the man. And everyone looked at the responsible parent who has very kindly accompanied our group, namely, my dad. He always comes on things like this because he's a taxi driver, so he can choose what hours he works. Florida Kirby kept nudging him. "Go on, Mr. Digby, go on." My dad didn't. My dad'd do it if he was here. My dad's brave. My dad's dead brave. She more or less shoved him past the marshal and up the ramp. The man waved us into the cage and fastened us both in. I remember Dad saying, "Has anyone ever died on this?" And the man glared at him. "No," he said. "No one has ever died on my ride." "Only asking," said Dad. But the man shut the cage door, looked at us through the bars, and said, "There's always a first time." If we'd if we'd said "let me out," then it wouldn't have done any good because straight away this incredibly loud music started up, and dry ice fog came pouring into the cage, and lights were bouncing around us. They really believed in a big build-up. Dad gripped my hand and shouted, "Don't be scared, Liam." Before I could say, "I'm not scared," something went bang, and we were rocketing through the air. There's a horrible crushing feeling, like a big fist squeezing you into a ball. Then at the top it just lets you go, and you feel lighter than air, and not scared of anything at all, as though all the fear has been squeezed out of you. The second bounce was nearly as high as the first, but it wasn't even a bit frightening. We sat there, two of us, laughing madly while we waited for the elastic to calm down. We bounced 5 more times. When we got off, I was tingling all over, and everything around me looked more in focus than usual. Everything was crisper and brighter. The boys were all hanging around the wooden Martian, shouting and yelling and cheering. The girls were still hanging around Miss Hayes, asking her about the baby. I realised we'd only been up there for 2 minutes. Florida Kirkby said, "Are you going to be sick?" No, Julie Johnson was sick on the ghost train. She seemed to think that if I knew this, I might agree to be sick, just to fit in. Florida Kirby is obsessed with two things, celebrities and being sick. Give her a sick celebrity, she's in heaven. I said, "That was golden. Can we do it again?" Dad said, "Not with me, you can't." But, Liam, what you've just had as a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and now you've had it. He went off to play on the hooker duck. Wayne Ajunkse was with him, and the two of them got into this profound conversation about Liverpool's defence. Dad said they were weak at the back. Wayne said they were solid at the back, but couldn't really dispute properly. Every now and then, I'd see the cage of Cosmic shoot up over the tops of the other rides, twisting and turning, like a moonshot from a cannon. And part of me thought, I've done that, and the rest of me thought, I've got to do it again. When it was time to leave, Miss Hayes marched us off to this special exit they've got just for school parties. I carried on watching one last glimpse of the Cosmic. It must have drifted a bit out of the line, because when I tried to walk through the gate, security man said, "Could you stand aside a moment, sir?" I stood aside and watched everyone else leaving. When Dad went by, he was so busy mentally managing Liverpool FC with Wayne, he didn't even glance at me. As soon as Dad had gone through, the security guard closed the door and said to me, "The main exit's over there, mate. This is school kids only." He thought I was a grown-up. People always think I'm older than I am, but no one had taken me for an actual grown-up before. I could have said, "I'm a school kid, please let me out." Or I could have said nothing and seized the opportunity to have another go on the Cosmic. So I did have two options, but somehow, in my head, they dwindled down to one. I went straight back to the Cosmic. The man in charge spotted me hanging around and said, "Didn't your mate like it?" My mate. I realised he was talking about my dad. "You know, you can do me a favour if you like. Help me plug the gaps." "What gaps?" "Well, I like to keep the ride busy. It doesn't look too tempting. The cage's just standing there. A lot of people chicken out at the last minute. I'd like to have someone who can step in from time to time." I said, "Sure," in a grown-up kind of voice, and stood by the cage. That afternoon I did the Cosmic with a boy whose mum was too scared to take him, a teenager who was doing it for a dare, someone whose girlfriend was too fat for the seat, and 4 others. 8 goes in all. The man said I must have highly developed centre of gravity. Every single time I got the same crispy New World feeling. It never wore off. According to the man, the Cosmic generates 4G on the way up. That's 4 times the gravitational force exerted by the Earth. 4G is enough to make you appreciate how comfy normal gravity is. I used to have it set at 5G, but people kept passing out, which wasn't good for business. You do have to feel sorry for anyone who lives on the high gravity planet all the time. It must be really hard work. Afterwards, the man brought some hot dogs and chips and we ate them in the cage, dangling gently from a piece of elastic high above the fair. You could see all the rides laid out like a model village, and sometimes a seagull went right past us. Finally, I spotted Dad walking quickly past the funhouse. I shouted, "Taxi! Taxi!" which usually works. He looked everywhere but up. It was ages before he saw me. I suppose if you're looking for me now, Dad, you're doing the same thing. Looking everywhere but up. In space. It was a laugh watching you then, but when we got back to the ground, you weren't amused. "Where the hell have you been? We counted you at the exit. People swore they saw you on the bus. We were halfway to Bootle before we realised you weren't with us." "I've been here. I was here the whole time, wasn't I, mister?" "Yeah," said the man in charge. "And what's your problem anyway, mate?" "I'm not your mate, I'm his dad." "You look a bit young to be his dad. He's 11. "What?" "He's just unusually tall." "It's not his height, it's his beard." That was the first mention of the premature facial hair, and Dad said, "Liam, coach." Everyone cheered and clapped when I finally got on the coach. I sat by the window and tried to get a look at my new facial hair reflecting in the glass. I could just make out little wisps of brown candy floss. I said, "How did they get there? Do you think the extra gravity might have squeezed them out of my face?" Randomly, this made Dad furious. "Liam, blah blah. You looking for you for the last 2 hours, blah blah. Had every taxi driver in the county looking for you. Reported your magical disappearance from a moving bus." "I wasn't on the bus." "Your magical disappearance from a moving bus to the police." "No." "And then I find you cheerfully waving and eating chips on a fairground ride. How do you think I feel about that? Happy that I'm alive?" He glared at me and said, "Possibly, in some remote and noble corner of my heart, yes, but mostly no." I said, "I'm sorry." Then he said, "You should know better, a big lad like you." That's the thing about parents. If you go missing, they worry that you might be dead. Then, when they find you, they want to kill you. Dad was furious because while they've been worrying himself sick, I hadn't been worried at all. Why wasn't I worried? Because I knew he'd come back for me. I never thought for a minute he wouldn't. When you're a kid, you think your dad can do anything. It's different now. If you'd asked me now if I think Dad's going to pop up at the controls of this rocket 200,000 miles above the surface of the Earth and fly us back to Bootle, I'd say probably not. I suppose that means I'm not a kid anymore. Okay, so what I want you to think about is, what do we know about Liam? What do we know about him? Okay, what we know about him around the outside and about his feelings inside. What he's feeling, what he thinks goes inside, okay, what he thinks people feel about him. So anything to do with him and his thoughts in here, and then things that we know about him around the outside. Okay, so I look forward to seeing some of your work sent in Class Dojo, and we will continue to read the book throughout the next couple of weeks.